Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations with Vegan Women Leaders. My guest today is Jacque Salomon. Jacque is a spiritual life coach, Native American activist, and founder of the non-profit Seeds to Inspire, which supports underrepresented, underserved, underfinanced, and marginalized communities in the Phoenix, Arizona metro area, as well as surrounding reservations. Jacque's own profound healing journey has resulted in her shedding 164 pounds. Through a whole foods, plant-based lifestyle, meditation, yoga, and psycho-spiritual remediation, she reversed her chronic diseases, including type 2 diabetes and hypertension. Jacque's devoted to restoring the health and well-being of individuals through radical self-care and self-love, with an emphasis on revitalizing the health and creativity of BIPOC women. Her life purpose is to facilitate collective trauma healing, raise Indigenous consciousness, and restore homeostasis on the planet through the divine feminine. Welcome to the show, Jacque.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here with you. I'm honored.
Oh, I am so excited to dive into a really wonderful conversation with you. I know you're part of the Divinity Coalition, which is an amazing coalition of women who are petitioning the US administration to address issues of health crises and structural inequalities. And it's just been great to meet you through that, and very much looking forward to our conversation today. So I'd love to kick off with, just tell us a little bit in a nutshell about your background. So in terms of, I believe you grew up in New York City, but you've also got a connection to Puerto Rico, although I believe you call it the island of, and I'm going to let you pronounce it, Borican. I've probably said that wrong, so I'm going to let you say that.
Oh, well, thank you. And again, thank you for the opportunity to share my story. I think it's not just my journey, it's a journey of so many of us. And I'm just an example of how systemized oppression and how racialized the healthcare system is. And we're just a consequence of it. So I'm just sharing my health journey, my restoration to health, as a reflection to all of the people out there that come from where I come from and look like me. So as you mentioned, I am from New York City. I was born and raised on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, New York, in the Villadix projects. I am a survivor of compulsory education through the New York City Public School. And I found my way to Arizona in 2010. Where I live now, where I co-founded my nonprofit with my best friend, Jessica Smotherman. And so anyway, we moved here in 2010, a year after my eldest son passed away. He was 11 years old, and he passed away from a severe allergic reaction to a pharmaceutical. That's where the healing journey began, and starting to understand why this happened, how it happened, and what I could do about it so I could help other mothers. And that's where my journey toward my spiritual path started, was to understand the loss and to understand that we were not a victim, that everything is intentional and everything is by design. And I had to understand my space and my place and learn from that and grow, because my twin boys were only 7 years old at the time. And I had to understand myself and my life so that I could live for them. And
wow, that's a really, I just want to pause there, because that's huge, and that's a very powerful, I guess, brave, stance to take. Like, do you know what I mean? That's, to lose a child, and I'm obviously, incredibly sorry for your loss, but to be able to take that perspective, how did you get there? Because, between actually losing your child and then getting to, like you said, it kind of accept that it's kind of part of this greater design. How did you get there?
The first year after my Jacque passed, and now I understand he transitioned, it's a blur. I don't remember much. I remember that every day I had to wake up and breathe. And every day I had to remind myself that my choice was to die with him or live for my babies. And it was where I started experiencing the divine feminine, truly, to understand and learn, to heal, to be present, and to be able to have answers for my babies. They had questions and I didn't have answers. And as a mother, it was my job to nurture their growth. It was my job to make sure that the environment that they were raised in was raised in truth, that was steep in wisdom. And so in order to do that, I had to grow so that I could be there present for them and guide them through the most painful thing that we could have ever experienced as a family. So it was in honoring them and making sure that I was there for them that I had to take it upon myself to heal my own wounds. I had to understand my own parenting. I had to learn why these things happen and why does it feel as a brown woman that I'm constantly struggling and suffering. I'm always fighting. And that's where the journey started to learn. And it really became a journey of uncolonizing my mind. It really became a journey of remembering who I was. At this time, very painfully, my relationship with my mother became very strained. And we struggled through the pain. We struggled through the healing. And 5 years ago, she orphaned me and walked away. And I had to learn what that was about as a mother. How does someone walk away from their own child? I understood what it felt like to lose a child. And I love my mother. And I had to learn and understand what could happen to a mother to make her turn on her own child. What pain has to go in there? What is the constitution that she brought into this world? What karma is she carrying? And that led me down the journey of collective trauma, ancestral PTSD, and understanding that I was raised in an urban reservation, not unlike many of the other communities that are oppressed, that are sick, that carry so much unresolved pain that we perpetuated on one another.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. That's powerful. Thank you so much for sharing this. I think that's incredible. So you mentioned that you've been doing you do your work with Native American communities and other marginalized communities. Can you tell us a little bit about the kind of work that you do and how you said, because it's interesting, you're talking a lot about spirituality, like you're a spiritual life coach, and coming to some of the conclusions that you've come to, about understanding people's wounds. But often, and I know I've heard this kind of in some communities. I think I either heard it on a podcast or a TV show or something like that, and it was two Black women, two African American women, and one of them said something about going to therapy, and the other one said, "Oh, Black women don't go to therapy," or do you know what I mean? And it was kind of like this thing of, we don't have time for that. Sometimes they'll say, we don't have time for this kind of, I don't know, new agey kind of stuff. So I'm just curious how you, the kind of work that you do, and how do you work with those communities when you say there is that trauma? How do you kind of work with the communities to help them get through, to kind of go through and move on, or in a way that you have?
I think the most important and most valuable thing that we can do as individuals is to recognize that each one of us have privilege. Every one of us has privilege. Me being a brown woman with origins from the island of Boriquen, which is Puerto Rico, I have within me ancestry of both colonizers, the Italian and the Spaniard, but I also have indigeneity from both of my ancestry. My indigenous family from Africa, on the west coast of Africa, my indigenous family from the Caribbean, all that lives within me. I had to learn and understand the conflict that lives within my bones, within my DNA, the knowledge, the data that I've carried generation from generation, ancestors have passed on to us, a knowledge and a wisdom. We owe it to ourselves when we have any form of privilege, to use that privilege and have a moral obligation to evolve and become the best humans that we can be. And two, to transmute that privilege into service for those that are most deserving and most overlooked, that society and culture has told them and convinced them that they don't matter. Culture and society has convinced human beings that they don't matter. And when you learn that you matter, when you can look at yourself in the mirror and love yourself, then you can never, ever deny the divinity of someone else. It would be a wound. It is a spiritual wound to yourself and to the whole if you deny another divinity. So what we need to do is we need to work on ourselves, and we need to heal our own wounds. We need to heal and understand who we are, because then the compassion and understanding for others becomes an overflow, and healing overflows. So we need to be able to understand the story of other people. We need to understand that the privilege that I have to live, work, and play on this land that is stolen. As an Indigenous woman that's had her land stolen, I get to live and play and work in Phoenix, Arizona on someone else's stolen land. And if we're not talking about that, and we're not acknowledging the basics of who we are as human beings, to understand that the land that we are in is steeped and built on blood, that we're not honoring, especially for me, the Hohokam, the Okimel Odom, and the Odom people, that the land that I get to be here. How can I not be of service to them? How can I not take my privilege that I have, and say, I'm sorry that this happened. What can I do to restore? What can I do to undo the damage that was done? What can I do just to show up and say, I see, your story is real, it's truth. How can I help you? And we don't have to come and save anyone. We're no one saving anyone. We're not here to change anyone. We're here to inspire, share resources, come arm to arm, support one another, love one another, and see one another as human beings, as interconnected, as one whole. This earth, nature, we're all one. This is all one whole. And we are all beings playing this game inside nature. And we all need to wake up. We all need to come together. And we all need to love each other through this. But we have to stand in truth, and we have to defend truth at all cost. That is the divine feminine. We have to stop accepting oppression. We have to stop accepting the exploitation of the female reproductive system. We have to stop accepting this sociopathic, narcissistic, gaslighting culture that we have, that convinces us that we don't matter, and that we're worthless, and that we're only here to serve, to make other people money. A system that is built and based and exists on Black and brown suffering. We need to start talking about all of that. That's how we come to one another. We start really, really seeing one another.
I love that. I love that you mentioned the importance of radical self-love and self-care. I'd love you to expand on that a little bit, because I think we all know what, self-care and, self-love is, but you use the word radical. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Sometimes I feel that we love each other, we love one another, but then when it comes to loving ourselves, we don't even know how to do that. The most radical thing we could do for ourselves is to live in truth, and that hurts. In order to live in truth, we have to be willing to look in the mirror and love ourselves enough to stop gaslighting ourselves into who we think we are. We have to be willing to go into those wounds that navigate our behaviors, to go into those patterns and start examining how we are as an individual in this world, in this human family, in this family with our non-human relatives. How do we engage them? How do we interact with them? Is that a conscious decision? Is that something that's going on? Is that a narrative that's guiding my behavior? Is that really me? Am I speaking from the heart? Am I doing from the heart? Am I not attached to my heart? Am I speaking? Do I have the courage to actually say what I feel? Do I know what I'm feeling? Do my feelings have a language? Can I even connect with my feelings? That takes a lot of work. That takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of courage and a lot of self-compassion. That's the radical self-love that we need. And to me, the majority of us, I would say, are wounded children walking around in adult bodies. And we think that we're doing the best that we can. No, we're doing the best that we can with what we have and what we know. So we have to learn more. We have to be willing to go into those dark spaces of pieces of us that are not walking with us every day, those pieces of us that live in the past, the pieces of us that are afraid of the future. They're very powerful. Depression and anxiety guides our behavior a lot. We have to be willing to step into those truths and look at ourselves very, very frankly and get to know ourselves and become our own best friends. That takes a lot of help. That takes a lot of support and a lot of courage. But as a community, we owe it to one another to do that, to support ourselves through that journey. We owe it to ourselves and we owe it to one another. And that's the kind of radical self-love that we need, that we would look at our children and say, I love you too much to lie to you. I love you too much to let you hurt yourself. That's we're not doing for ourselves. That's what we need.
I love that. I love that. You've mentioned a few times you take a spiritual approach or a spiritual life coach. What, obviously the word, well, spirituality, you know, has got not so much of a connotation as religion, which is kind of different. And, you know, obviously lots of issues around, I guess, you know, organized religion, although there's, you know, there's positive parts, I think, of all of those. But spirituality is a little bit different. But it still can have, I think, within activist circles. And I had this conversation with Victoria Moran, who's wonderful and very spiritual. And we were kind of trying to unpack that in activist circles. You know, it can still seem a bit kind of, oh, it's spiritually and new agey kind of thing. But I'm curious, just to your take on it, why is spirituality, why is taking a spiritual approach important to this healing work?
We're quantum beings. We're energy. We're life. We're light. We're information. We're vibration. That's just the truth of who we are. That's spirituality. Understanding ourselves as quantum beings, understanding ourselves as what is our relationship with nature, to nature, part of nature. No, we are nature. We have forgotten that we're nature. We have forgotten that we're the air, that we're the water. We're the water carriers. We're the water bearers. We're over 70% water. We're beautiful pieces of the ocean that decided to experience itself on land. And then we transition back. You know, we're water. We're made up of carbon. We're made up of oxygen. We're made up of stardust. Everything that's out there is within us. We're connected to everything, as above, so below, as within, so without. We are just one being having individual experiences. And we don't know that. We don't know that. But you know what? We suspect it, because humans are highly spiritual beings. We're always walking around, like my teacher Thomas Hubel says, we're question marks in search of our answers. What are we asking? Why are we in such deep introspection, trying to figure out who we are? What is my purpose? Why was I born? Why are these my parents? Why did I come here? We're always trying to figure out why we are and who we are and what we are. That's spirituality. And so most of us will gravitate towards some kind of organized response, some kind of organized answer to those questions. And there have been many avatars on the planet for generations and generations and generations that have come in response to what was going on at that time and place with an answer to guide and inspire and help humanity evolve. And so because we're all interconnected, we carry different DNA and different ancestry, all of us are going to gravitate to a particular message through a particular avatar. It's all the same message. It's just a response that resonates with my indigeneity, with my culture. Something about your response resonates with me. All of that needs to be celebrated, because it's all the same response to the same answer, who we are. Unfortunately, especially in modern times, there's been religions that have used that influence and that vulnerability and created systems of control. I can't speak to the whys of that, but I can speak to if anyone and anything makes me question my own answer and makes me follow only yours, then that's something that I wouldn't do. Nature doesn't ask for guidance from anything else. Nature knows. And our jobs are to unlearn what we've been taught and remember who we really are. We know everything. We know exactly who we are. We just don't trust. We don't trust our own intuition. We've been taught to suppress our intuition. We've been taught to not listen, only guide ourselves from here. And when we have wisdom and intuition without compassion, it's very dangerous. It's our job to align all three of our brains. All three of our brains. To me, that is the Holy Trinity. And we come together as one, and our actions and our words and our thoughts are all aligned. That's spirituality.
I love that. I've not heard it described like that before, and I really love the way you've described that. It's a practical, and I think it could be, I think that will help people who maybe poo-poo spirituality to come from it from a different angle. And so I really love that. So thank you for sharing your take on that. So I'd love you to share your health journey. I know you mentioned, obviously, your part of your journey happened in 2010 and the loss of your child, but also you've had a physical transformation as well. You shed 164 pounds. You managed to reverse your type 2 diabetes, hypertension, I think a couple of other chronic illnesses. Can you tell us a little bit about that? So where were you in terms of your health, and how did you because that's a big transformation. I imagine that's about a physical, emotional, mental and spiritual transformation. Can you talk us a little bit through that?
Yes, thank you. It'd be my pleasure. So in 2016, it was early 2016, I was just getting fed up with all the diagnoses. It was not just me. So it was my whole family. I was married at the time. So my ex-husband was experiencing organic brain syndrome, which basically he was experiencing damage to his brain where his cognitive function was lapsing, his memory was going. We discovered that one of my 14-year-old twins at the time was experiencing the same thing. And when his neurologist sent him to get imaging done, the radiologist called and said, "Are you sure you sent me a 14-year-old boy? Because I could swear I'm looking at a man in his 40s with early onset Alzheimer's."
Oh, wow. Wow.
At the same time, both twins were being diagnosed with early prediabetes. We were all obese. I myself had hypertension, had anxiety. I was diagnosed bipolar. I had my hypertension. It was just everywhere we went. If we went away for the weekend, it was 2 Ziploc bags full of medicine for 4 people. It was just, we were just existing, and we were trying to find ways to find joy among just the existence of just being. And I started studying that summer, and I came across Forks Over Knives. Forks Over Knives, that was it. And I was just like, what? I looked at my children, and I have to be honest, the first thing that hit me was I was poisoning my children. I was loving my children to death, and I didn't know it. And it hurt so badly that I thought I was doing what was right by them, but I was actually creating the disease in their body, perpetuating it. And then again, as a mother, and I said, oh no, yay. You tricked me once, but now this is for me to fix. This is for me to do. Nobody's going to hurt my kids. So then I enrolled in the T. Cole and Campbell course, and I started learning all I could. And that's where all of the social injustices that I had been fighting all came together under one system, under one umbrella, one thread. I could see it all. And that's where it was like, okay, there's something much bigger happening here. And I really went full hard, and I was like, that's it. We transitioned almost overnight. One of the other twin, he broke his leg, and he needed a cast from his toe to his hip. And it was the first year, because my twins learned differently. Part of my social justice fight was also against discrimination in our school systems. So I was fighting with the ACLU for that. And he had just entered another school where he was going to finally be able to play basketball, finally be able to be on the team. And he breaks his leg.
Oh.
And the surgeon says, I'm sorry, he's probably out for the season. And Katrina, I was in the emergency room, and he looked at me, and his face, he just burst it, like this look on his face, like his whole life just ended. And again, I was like, yeah, this is not happening. My son will play. I don't know how we're going to do this, but he will play. And we went whole food plant-based immediately overnight, and it never stopped. And do you know, he played. He healed so well. He actually played at the end of that season.
I love that.
And we continued to heal from there, And I just went full on. I learned, I studied. And then I realized as we were healing, why don't we know this? Why do I have to research this? Why is this so secret? Why is this so easy and so inaccessible? That's where my fight, my activism started, because I was fighting the school systems because they were pushing up our Black and brown children, our children that learns differently, our trans children. They were just pushing them out because they couldn't conform, and they couldn't be what the school system wanted them to be. And at the same time, I'm fighting this cause over here, and I'm saying, wait a minute, what is happening here? My activism came, and I said, if they're doing this to our Black and brown children, what are they doing to, I'm sorry, if they're doing this to me, and I have the resources to support this fight, what are they doing to our children that are in foster care, to our children that live with grandparents, to our single moms that are, working 2 jobs and raising 4 kids? If they're doing this to me and I can fight, what are they doing to them? And I started seeing this with the health journey. It's like, I have the privilege of studying. I have the privilege of paying for these courses. I have the privilege of going to Whole Foods. Why is this only accessible to me? Because I have privilege. That's where Cease to Inspire was born. Because when I shed all the weight and I healed and I felt alive, How do you not want people to feel healthy? How do you not want to go back and scream and say, you could do this? I'm just like you. Look, I was raised just like you. I was taught just like you. I went to the same schools like you, and I did this. And if I can do this, you can do this. Let me help you. Let me help you, because it feels so good when your chemistry in your body changes and your cells in your brains are swimming in love and light and compassion and not suffering and pain and fear. That's also spiritual transformation you go to. Your awareness becomes more keen. Your compassion just expands naturally, organically. You become more of the you that you were born to be. You become more of the natural you that you were born to meet. That is the healing that happens on multi dimensions when you change when you transition to a plant-based diet. Is becoming truly back to who we are. Not so much of changing. It's a journey back home to our hearts.
Wow. Well, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. It's so inspiring. I'm feeling personally so inspired. So I hope everyone listening and watching is too. I'm sure they are. I'd like to talk to you about the role of anger, because, I can hear, like, obviously, there are people within social justice movements, obviously very angry at what's happened. Like you said, I saw you got very animated when you said, why is it that, as a person of privilege, we have access to these Whole Foods and others don't? And I'm just curious about, because there can be good anger, I guess, and not so great anger. And I'm curious as to what you believe the role, like, do we need to transmute anger to something else in order for it to be effective? I'm just kind of curious between that, because I love what you're saying about, the love and light and coming back to ourselves and joy. And yet there's obviously going to be, some people going, well, we're angry, we've had these centuries of press and, we're angry. Don't talk to us about love and light. So I'm just kind of curious how do we kind of, how do we handle that? What's the role of anger and what do we need to do with it?
First, I think we need to stop judging anger. I think that's the first thing. There's way too much judgment going on. There's way too much deciding what's appropriate and what's inappropriate. What's effective, what's ineffective. You know what? Anger is an emotion, and you're entitled to your anger. You are entitled to feel how you feel. You're entitled to defend the right to feel how you feel. We are told how to feel from the moment we take our first breath. We're told we shouldn't be crying. We're told we should be sleeping at this time. We're constantly being told who and what we are, what we're supposed to be doing. And so every time we're judged, we're going to fight back. So the first thing is to embrace our anger. I have a right to be angry. Now, the healing portion of it is, what do I do with it? How do I express it? How do I channel it? And that happens through a filter of a space of knowledge, groundedness, and presence. We don't want our expression of our anger to come from a wound. We want the expression of our anger to come from a healed, whole place. I am angry because I didn't know things that I'm entitled as a human being to know. I am angry that I don't have access to things that as a human being I have a right to have access to, and that you've deemed that only the worthy. And who deems what's worthy? See, it's okay to have that anger. Nobody has a right to even think of questioning it. But I think we owe it to ourselves to say, what is the best way to utilize that? What's fueling my anger? Let me learn what's going on so that I can do something about it and channel that energy, because it's just energy. It's a response. How do we use that to be most effective? Right? So we don't want to give anger a voice. We want to use it as fuel. We want to use it as propulsion into action, intentional action, action that comes from presence and clarity. We have to learn how to channel our intuition and that anger to do what is right by the whole. And if we're always talking about this makes me angry, but what can I do to heal the whole? How can I contribute to heal the whole? Because if we're not as individually okay, the whole is never going to be okay. And if the whole is okay as individuals, we're never going to be okay. So we have to use that anger and learn from it. What is it communicating to us? It's speaking to us. The feelings are communication. What is that anger informing me of? And now what, as a human being, do I have the moral obligation to respond to? Our ancestors put us where we're supposed to be precisely. And if we're angry, that means that anger is there for a reason. How do we channel it? How do we do what's best for the whole? And how do we heal ourselves so that we use it to the best of our ability? You know, we have to be those warrior monks. We have to know that we can fight, but we have to do everything in our power to make sure that we do what's best. That's the difference, I think, with anger, is to do what's right in action, but also know that it can be very dangerous. So we need to know how to harness that and use it as fuel.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I guess following on from that as well, obviously we're seeing a lot of division at the moment in the US, obviously, you know, with the political situation, but even on, you know, obviously on social media and even within activist groups, whether it's animal activists or, you know, women's rights activists, there, you know, you agree on one particular issue, but then there's still that division of, oh, well, you think that, therefore, you know, you're in that box, or, oh, you think that, so you're in that box. And then we've seen people kind of, and obviously, you know, the US administration kind of calling for unity, and yet, you know, how do we do that? And again, without, I guess, trivializing people's responses who are rightly angry about what's going on. Do you see what I mean? It's kind of that balance between saying, hey, look, we need unity, we need love, we need peace. But at the same time, as we mentioned, there's, you know, people saying, well, no, actually, you know, we've, you know, we're angry about this. So what are your views, or what's your perspective on how we can start to at least build towards some kind of unity, both within our activist groups, but also the broader society and world?
I was just having a conversation with my amazing team this morning about this. I can speak from my own personal experience, and I won't even pretend to be speaking for the whole, but I know for me that we're all important. All of our feelings, our emotions, our responses are important. And I think we need to start devaluing what everyone else is doing and understand that we're all necessary. We all need to be doing. There's too much work to do to be fighting amongst each other. There's just too much work to do. And there's an urgency upon us to be comparing and fighting among each other instead of appreciating and collaborating and working together. You know, I see myself as a vegan, but not because I eat plant-based. I eat plant-based because I'm a vegan. And that's how I approach life. And that's how I approach these oppressions. I have been a vegan my entire life. I have stood against oppression. I have stood against injustice. I have stood against what's wrong. I have fought for what's right. And I have suffered greatly to stand in truth. I have suffered greatly to fight for truth. And when my food choices came to my awareness, guess what? I made that choice too. When I realized what's going on with the environment, guess what? I made that choice too. That's our journey. To me, that's the vegan ethic. It's to return and remember what it is being human. And there's so much going on out there. We all need to come together and support one another. We need people going out there and fighting. We need people going out there and protecting. We need people going out there and saying, you will not lie to us anymore. But there's also those of us that are activists that are healers, that feel that our role is, while you're out there and you're doing the good fight, we have to create the new so that we can escort people into the new. Some of us have to be bridges. So we're not against one another. I support you. Go do the fight. My job is to, when you're saving people, you have somewhere to send them. We're over here, the healers, lovers of humanity, restoring the earth. We're creating that new, our collaborative new that you're fighting for. That's what we're doing. So we're not against one another. We're all doing the same job. We have to remember that and wake up to that. We're all needed. We're all important and we're all valuable. There's too much to do in a very short amount of time for us to forget that. We're one team. We're one team and we all love humanity, or we wouldn't all be doing this. It may look different, but we're all doing the same thing.
I love that. I love that. I was applauding there when you said that. That's so true about there's so many different types of activism, and yet you do that, and then you come here and we do this to go forward. We need all types of it. I love that you've said that. That's amazing. I just want to touch on before we do a wrap up and rapid fire questions, but you touched earlier on the divine feminine. Can you just expand a bit on what that means to you? Because I think when people say, I know when I hear it, I think of it as something, or, it touches something within me, perhaps stirs something in my spirit. What does it mean to you? And particularly in terms of how it informs your healing and your activism?
Thank you for that question. The divine feminine as a principle. We have the divine feminine, we have the sacred masculine. And to me, the divine feminine is the womb. The divine feminine is the portal of life. The divine feminine in this time and place is here to nurture, is here to co-create, is here to heal, is here to educate, is here to protect. Protect life at all cost, protect truth at all cost, protect the children at all cost, and create fertile ground for these beautiful souls, these beautiful light that come to this planet knowing exactly who they are and what they're supposed to be doing. It is our job to make sure that the soil is ripe and abundant and healthy so they can actualize themselves. That's our job. And our job is to do that for all of humanity. And the sacred masculine can only rise in the presence of the divine feminine. All male, that principle, it originates from the divine feminine. Look at the womb. Literally, life comes from the beyond and comes through us. Life comes through us. Those children are not ours. They don't belong to us. We are a portal of life on the planet. And if we don't honor that, and we don't see truly the beauty and the humility and the importance of our role as portals of life and nurturers of that life, then we have lost ourselves as humanity. If we don't, the divine feminine does not stand up and take our place and say, we are here to educate, we are here to nourish, we are here to nurture, but we are here to protect, and we are here to fight for all life, for all truth. Wherever divinity is being questioned, we will stand and we will fight and we will protect. To me, that is the divine feminine.
Wow, I love that. I love hearing different people's definitions of that. I love yours. That's brilliant. So the next few questions, they're ones that I ask everyone. They're kind of rapid fire questions. So just kind of answer them in maybe, a sentence or two. What's the most courageous thing you've done?
Become a mother.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. It is. You're right. You don't really think of that. I haven't had anyone answer that, but it's true. It is brave to do that, to bring children into this world and to parent them, particularly in the way that you have, to break the cycles that both ancestral and familial. I think that's amazing. Thank you. What does leadership mean to you? Sorry, go ahead.
They are our greatest teachers. They're our mirrors.
Yeah.
You want to really find out who you are, you look in the face of your children, and they will show you all of who you really are.
Wow, thank you for that. What does leadership mean to you, and what style of leader would you say you are?
Leadership to me means that you embrace everyone's gifts and skills, and you encourage everyone to be their best, and you highlight every gift and talent and skill that everyone has, and you find ways to bring all that medicine into one space and co-create from it.
Love it. Love it. Brilliant. Your answers are so unique. I'm loving this. What do you love most about yourself?
That I'm love. That I'm love incarnate. That I can be compassionate. That I live in truth as much as I can. And that I walk in authenticity as much as I can.
Oh, that's amazing. And finally, what would be maybe one key lesson that you've learned throughout your life, throughout your journey, that you would like to share with other vegan women leaders?
This is on us. This movement, it's on us. It's time. It's time that we understand that we have a moral obligation to do everything that we can to be the best that we can be. And all of our wounds need to heal and come whole. We need to be the beautiful prisms of light so that divine can shine through us. It's on us to heal ourselves and on us to come together and remember that we are one sisterhood, that we are one unified divine feminine. And once that force comes onto this planet, we're good.
That's brilliant. Just wrap up by telling us just briefly the kind of work that you do with Seeds to Inspire and where we can find you online.
Oh, great. Thank you. So we're a social justice education nonprofit, and really our work is twofold. We educate, we have programs and we have workshops and we have study groups that are really focused on all of the racialized trauma, all of the collective trauma, all of the systems that are in place that keep Black and brown people oppressed, and the systems that interconnect them all and keep them going. We talk about uncolonizing our mind and really inviting re-indigenization. And we also do that action by feeding people. We address all the social injustices. We have the food injustice, the health inequities. We address all that by bringing food, restoring dignity, and showing people that they matter and that you get food because you have a right to have food because you breathe. You have a right to eat because you are a human being and nothing more. And that's what we do. And we bring whole food, plant-based, immune-boosting food to displaced populations, to populations that do not get any services at all. Those are the people that need us the most because they're the most vulnerable to COVID and they're most vulnerable to becoming the first climate refugees. And that's not okay. And that's divine feminine saying, not on my watch, that's not okay. So those are the two things that we do in our community. And we collaborate with other communities all over the globe that are doing the same thing so we can learn from one another and support one another.
Amazing. And we can find you at seedstoinspire.com.
Amazing. It's www.seedstoinspireaz.org.
Ah, fantastic. Wonderful. Jacque, it's been so lovely speaking with you today. I've really, really enjoyed our conversation. I think you've given so much, generosity and just sharing. You've definitely given me lots of food for thought. And I'm sure that people listening and watching have got a lot out of this as well. So do check out Jacque's work. It's amazing, that kind of work that she's doing. So yeah, do check that out and support that however you can. And it's been a pleasure seeing you today, Jacque. Thank you for everyone for tuning in, watching and listening, and bye for now.
Thank you.